I also like in this deck because it makes it easier to have an empty hand for your ensnaring bridge.
Yeah.
Speaking of easy for an empty hand, Pulliam has mulliganed to 6 to start the game.
That was intentional, so the ensnaring bridge is always online.
Yeah, with London Mulligan, maybe just always start on 6. Probably not, though. Island will be his first turn play. Snow-covered island at that.
As far as I can remember, there's only ever been 2 times in my life where I ever purposefully mulliganed to have a smaller hand. Once was against Lost in the Woods.
Sure.
And the other was against Ebony Owl Netsuke.
Oh, wow. That is a blast from the past.
Yeah. If you have to look up Ebony Owl Netsuke, you are probably not alone. It's a card that works really well alongside Howling Mine effects. Basically punishes your opponent for having a lot of cards in hand.
An Eye of Nowhere strategy.
Yeah. And as a Zoo player, I would regularly mulligan down to 4 or 5 cards just to make sure that Netsuke wasn't going to start pinging me if they hit me with like 1 bounce spell, you know.
Sasser will be starting the game at 17, fetching for his Steam Vents. Turn 1, Faithless Looting. This either means he already has an Arclight Phoenix or he has a bad hand.
Yeah. A lot of times you like to use Faithless Looting in the same way you would use a Brainstorm in Legacy, where you kind of sculpt your hand before casting it, and then you try to get max value out of it. And the way to do that is to discard Arclight Phoenix.
He's already selected the first card he will discard, giving a think to the second.
I have to imagine that the first one is Arclight, and the second one was a spell, or maybe a land that he might end up needing at some point.
It looks like Serum Vision's Faithless Looting was a discard, so I guess he was flooded on lootings.
Perhaps.
Chalice on 1, the turn 2 play for Pulliam off a second snow-covered island. That is bad news for Drake Sasser.
Yeah, this one might be over real fast.
Here's why Sasser aggressively fired off a cantrip. No second land.
Okay. Sorcerer Spyglass here. Not going to name a whole lot out of the deck, but could potentially lock up a fetch land by naming Scalding Tarn. You know that there's 3 more in the deck. Nothing else really in the deck gets affected by the Spyglass proper.
This hand actually has a lot of play against Chalice of the Void. If Sasser could find a second land, he sees Thing in the Ice and 3 Manamorphose. Couple cards locked up, Gut Shot, Sleight of Hand, and Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, if Sasser's able to pull off a Thing in the Ice on the next turn, then there's a good chance that he actually gets that Thing in the Ice online, and then Pulliam's going to definitely need an Ensnaring Bridge to contain it.
Spyglass names Scalding Tarn. All Sasser can do is try to Chalice check. Sleight of Hand is countered by the Chalice of the Void. Spire of Industry will be land number 4 for Pulliam, or not. He's going to actually transmute to Laria West.
There's quite a couple of cool lands in Pulliam's deck. He can go get Geiger Reach Sanitarium if he wants to, though in this scenario, I think he just wants something that tutors, and he's going to go get Inventor's Fair.
Yeah, there is Inventor's Fair there. That's an avenue down the line to go find Ensnaring Bridge. There's also a Blast Zone in the deck as a potential answer to Thing in the Ice. Go to Sasser. He will discard Arclight Phoenix to hand size.
That's one way to get in the graveyard. I'm fine commiserating here with Sasser as an Izzet Phoenix player. You have to keep a lot of hands that have 1 land and a bunch of cantrips. Here he just got hit with a Chalice of the Void and it just locked him out of the game, and he never drew a land for the Thing in the Ice. But he's not out of the game yet. I don't want to count him out. But
here's a Mox Opal for Pulliam. That's artifact number 3, turning on the Inventor's Fair. Now he plays the Spire of Industry as the land.
Now he can tutor for Ensnaring Bridge. That's going to make it so that Sasser can basically only win with Aria Flame at some point. That's not good news for Sasser.
Yeah, you need 3 lands to cast that one. That's the first hump he's going to have trouble getting over. We see him just try another 1-mana spell. Continues to miss that second land drop. And now we're for an Ensnaring Bridge from Pulliam.
I misspoke. Drake Sasser's actually notorious for not playing Aria Flame.
Oh, I forget about this.
And then instead playing Pyromancer Ascension. So there's that.
Pyromancer Ascension, you can resolve your copies through a Chalice of the Void, but not the spell proper.
Right.
But we're a ways off of doing any of that.
And with Pulliam at 21, he's going to have to get both Pyromancer Ascensions online and then cast a bunch of lightning bolts. I don't think that it's possible for him to win this game because he doesn't have Aria Flame. It was already pretty unlikely he wins.
Now Pulliam is going to tighten the strings. Goes and finds Crucible of Worlds. His land last turn was Ghost Quarter. Sasser's been having trouble hitting land drops, and Pulliam's going to wear him out of those. Cast the Crucible, though he does tap Ghost Quarter for it. He's going to replay the Inventor's Fair and now transmute Tolaria West.
Yeah, with Ghost Quarter, Crucible Worlds, and just a stock battlefield with a bunch of these lock pieces, I don't think that Sasser really has an out here.
Welding Jar added to Pulliam's battlefield. You see him drum up Ipnu Rivulet, the win condition.
I fully expect Sasser to concede here in about a turn or two just to save time, or right now.
And now is as good a time as any. Will Pulliam up a game where Sasser could not find a second land and might have been in trouble even if he did.
Yeah, I mean, if he had played a Thing in the Ice on turn 2, he could maybe transformed it on turn 3 and attacked for 7 damage. But I'm pretty sure Pulliam just cast the Ensnaring Bridge the turn after that.
Players going to their sideboards here, see if Sasser can find some help. He has 3 Ravenous Traps, 3 Force of Negation, 2 Blood Moon. There's 2 Aria of Flame, 2 Anger of the Gods, a Magmatic Sinkhole, a Flame Slash, and a Beacon Bolt.
Now, the first thing you'll notice if you look at the sideboard, there's not a single card that says Destroy Target Artifact. That's going to be fairly problematic here for Sasser because this Prison deck really thrives on people not having a whole lot of hate for it. Now, what he can do is he can try to win the game alternate ways via Aria Flame. That gets around a Ensnaring Bridge, and it can kind of fight through Chalice of the Void. He can also bring in Blood Moon to shut off those specialty lands that Pulliam really utilized in that previous game. And then Force of Negation, I think, can come in as well as a pretty clean answer to almost all of the lock pieces that Pulliam can throw at him.
Sideboard for Pulliam on the prison side of things. We have a Defense Grid, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Psy Master Thopterist, a Torpor Orb, 2 Pyroclasm, 2 more Sorceress Spyglass, 3 Spellskites, 3 Urza Lord High Artificer, and a Damping Sphere.
So Pulliam has a lot of options here on how he wants to sideboard. If he wants to play around stuff like Shattering Spree or Vandal Blast or whatever, he might want to bring in Spellskite. Just to protect from those disenchant effects. But unfortunately for him, there are none from Drake Sasser's side of things. So if he does bring in Spellskite, it's going to be relatively dead. I do think Damping Sphere is quite good. It really slows down the Phoenix deck, makes it so that their Thing in the Ice and Arclight Phoenix draws aren't nearly as degenerate. You can probably safely get all your Spyglasses out of the deck. There aren't a whole lot of hits for it at all. And then if you want maybe an alternate win condition, Psy Master Thopterist is okay. And then Grafdigger's Cage can slow down Phoenix if that's really what you think the matchup is about.
Pretty cool take on the prison strategy from Will Pulliam, and if you're liking what you're seeing, maybe you can try it out at a Star City Games game night near you. We got the Dead Under promotion going.
Dead Under.
Every week in July. Check out unique sleeves and tokens there at go.starcitygames.com/game night.
Do we have the playmat for this? Because the playmat actually is extended art, and you actually get to see the zombie chasing the koalas. That one's nice.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really get it from the smaller picture. You can check out playmat sleeves and bundles. This is part of our creature collection, of course.
Yeah, the creature collection has always been one of my favorite parts about working for Star City Games. A lot of unique takes on animals kind of existing in these fantasy worlds where that Magic has created over the years. I think simultaneously my favorite and least favorite is Slobbering Miledriver.
I was just going to say, last time I was in Roanoke, I picked up a couple packs of Slobbering Miledriver sleeves as a reminder of how bad things can be.
Oh, man. Now, I will say that my least favorite by a mile, actually, now that I think about it more, was Snipcaster Mage.
Sure.
Because you got so many more. You could be Snipcrabster Mage. You could be Snapcrabster Mage.
I like the Snapcrabster.
But just Snipcaster? Come on.
I think that the one that was a little tough, it was hard to say, was Manatiri Mentor.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
That's a mouthful. So Sasser, as you mentioned, not showing up with any shenanigans, any ways to destroy artifacts.
You know, it took me a second to remember the shenanigans was a magic card. And I was just like, you're right. He's not really doing anything shenaniganly.
Just playing a stock as a Phoenix deck.
Yeah. Fun to see here.
You think that's going to cost him a lot in matchups like this? Do you think a little bit of artifact hate's a big difference maker?
I mean, I think one shenanigan is relatively free as far as that's concerned. And I would actually be surprised, you know, if I was looking over the deck list and saw 0 copies of any sort of disenchant effect. It is surprising. I will say that.
Seems like he's leaning a little bit hard on those force of negations in matchups like this.
I mean, that's a reasonable take, and, you know, I don't blame him for it.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out here. Players giving a look and a think to their opening 7s. I know with decks like Pulliam's, this prison deck, it's really tough to evaluate opening hands. So many of your cards are just nonsense.
Yeah, not only that, but you also have to take in consideration what are the nut draws my opponent can have. Can I beat those? If not, maybe need a mulligan. But can I beat their average hand or their slightly above average hand? Is this hand fast enough to compete in this world or that world? And decides to throw it back. You know, the London mulligan does not make it so that you get a lot less punished for mulliganing.
And game number 1 was a mulligan. He did win that game. Especially when you're playing a deck that's trying to cast Chalice of the Void on turn 1 with Simian Spirit Guide, you have a lot of parts that function a lot worse if you draw them a little bit into the game. You really want this stuff in your opening hand.
Yeah, right. Looks like we have an update on one of the back tables. Robert Stanley takes game 1 in the Jund Dinosaur Mirror. 2 wins on the right-hand side of the screen for the team of Brier, Pulliam, and Stanley.
Yeah, looking good for them so far here. Pulliam going to take a look at a 6, see if he can keep it.
All right. Seems a lot happier with this. No more head and hands. Going to go ahead and put one on the bottom. Looks like he did bring in Spellskite, so does it kind of expect Sasser to have some amount of disenchants?
Serum Visions is where Sasser will start off a Spire Bluff Canal.
Hilariously enough, Spellskite's also horror.
Can't bounce it with the Awoken Horror.
Yeah. Don't worry, I know all the good horrors now.
You can sure attack into it.
You know how I learned that a bunch of the cards were horrors?
When you transform
when
your
I
thing in the ice.
transformed my thing in the ice and they didn't get bounced.
Bedlam Reveler, a notable horror.
Phyrexian Obliterator.
Oh, yikes.
That one made me throw up.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, that one you also can't really beat. You can't really attack the thing into that.
Yeah, that was, luckily for me, that was during the time where we were playing Set Adrift.
Ah.
And I took 15 points of damage from it and then Set Adrift it.
Nice.
And then they died.
Thalia West tapped is the first land for Pulliam. We see Island and a Manamorphose for Sasser. 1 red, 1 blue. Second Manamorphose makes the same mana. I see a Faithless Looting in hand. Don't know if we have an Arclight Phoenix.
I don't believe so, but does have the ability to play Sleight of Hand and dig for Phoenix, then to cast a Faithless Looting. Drake here just going through the permutations, trying to figure out the best line of play.
Update from the standard seat. Robert Stanley, a quick 2-0 win over Ali Warfield.
Yeah, that can just happen sometimes in the Jund Dinosaur's Mirror. If you're, on the play or you have one of those 2-man accelerators and your opponent doesn't, there's not a whole lot you can do to play defense in those situations. So, not surprising, but a bit of a heartbreaker for Warfield, I'm assuming.
Sleight of hand for Sleight of Hand from Sasser. Storm's at 3.
Love to get the Storm counter out when my deck's not a Storm deck.
And he's not going to fire off the Faithless Looting.
That's discipline. That's some real discipline right there. A lot of people would just say, well, I might be able to hit a Phoenix in the top 2. But Sasser understands that, that Faithless Looting has a lot of value as the game goes on.
Spire Bluff Canal, Chalice on 1. Force of Negation from Sasser. Pitches that Sleight of Hand. Important to take care of that one.
The more I see Force of Negation in Modern, the more I really like it. Everyone was kind of chomping at the bit for Force of Will for a while because Modern is so busted. But Force of Negation seems like the perfect compromise. You can't use it proactively to protect your own combo, and it doesn't counter creatures. So it finds that medium place that Modern is trying to fit between Standard and Legacy.
Yeah, it tends to be at its best against decks that are not sympathetic characters in the field.
Yeah.
Flooded Strand is land number 3 for Sasser. He's going to pass with the 3 lands up, though. Snow-covered island for Pulliam. Defense Grid.
It's not one I expected to come in here. These Is a Phoenix decks have very little in the way of counter magic. Defense Grid only protects from 3 cards, and Sasser's version specifically. But it's going to work out here.
Second Chalice. Welding Jar.
It's really bad news for Drake Sasser now because his deck does not contain ways to destroy Chalice of the Void, so he's going to need to win the hard way.
We're entering 4-mana Arclight Phoenix territory.
Yep. What's the 4-mana 3/2 flyer haste artifact creature?
Snare Thopter.
Snare Thopter. Get some classic Snare Thopter action going here. Looks like an Aria Flame got picked up there for Sasser. That's a start. That can fight through an Aria Flame, but so can... that can fight through Chalice of the Void, but so can a Crackling Drake.
Crackling Drake for Crackling Drake Sasser. Takes the damage off a Fire Outlet to cast it.
Hilariously enough, it still gets pumped by the exiled card from Force Negation, so it is quite large right now.
And here's a Spellskite for Pulliam. This is a little bit interesting here. We have 2 Welding Jars now and a Spellskite against a deck that's not destroying artifacts, so that's kind of playing into Sasser's favor here.
Oh, absolutely, and there's a chance that that's kind of why he doesn't bother. When I was playing Is It Phoenix, I would regularly have 1 and 2 Shatterstorms on my deck because Shatterstorm got around Spellskite and Welding Jar with the no regeneration clause. But all the other artifact destruction cards I played got very easily handled by these Welding Jars out of these mono or blue-based prison strategies.
Yeah, for sure. Things continue to go the way of Brier, Pulliam, Stanley as Aiden Brier does take game number 1 in the Legacy seat.
Now, if I'm Sasser, you have to basically decide between casting Aria Flame or not. The 10 life is a pretty big deal, but it makes up for itself pretty quickly. And if Pulliam's able to stick in an Ensnaring Bridge soon, Sasser's going to really wish he had Aria Flame active. I fully expect Aria Flame to come down, send Pulliam to 30, and then Sasser's going to start throwing a bunch of 1-mana cards away to start dealing some chip damage.
Yeah, the 1-mana spells into the Chalice, they scale well with both the Aria and the Crackling Drake. So you catch up with that TEM relatively quickly.
Now, what he can also do is, I believe he has at least 2 or 3 instant sorceries in hand. He has, it looks like 6 in the graveyard. So he can play all 3 of them, attack for 9, put Pulliam down to 11, and then if somehow he draws like Manamorphose into another spell next turn, he might actually just have lethal on the following attack step, and then there's no real need to play the Aria Flame in that scenario.
Right, well, here is the Aria. Pulliam to 30 off of this.
Now, I would suspect just go ahead and main phase like a Faithless Looting or whatever, let it get countered, but that deals 1 damage with the Aria and pumps the Crackling Drake a little bit.
So he'll go to 17 off the Islet to cast a Looting, so Aria puts Pulliam to 29. Chalice counters that. The Drake attacks. I want to say it's a 7 currently.
Yeah, I believe it's 7. Should be going down to 22, but there might be an instant or sorcery hiding over there in the graveyard.
Yeah, we'll get confirmation on that as we go back to Pulliam. Draws up the 1 card and passes. Smells like a Whirve invention, but we'll see.
No, if it's Whirve, that's actually pretty bad because Defense Grid makes it so you can only Whirve for 2. So I believe it's just a brick. I'm not positive, obviously, but
yeah, no, that's a really good point.
But Defense Grid works on both players, not just your opponent.
So Manamorphose for Sasser, second counter on the Aria, Pulliam to 20, red and blue mana floating.
Yeah, and now here I bet he just goes like Faithless Looting, Lightning Bolt, whatever, just burn these cards and then start attacking through the air.
He has picked up an Arclight Phoenix. That's something he could cast.
That seems like a fine cast here. Just play your land, don't take a damage. Attack for roughly 11 damage. Potentially 12, I guess.
Yeah, so there's the Phoenix.
Yeah, just casting Looting here equates to... or casting any spell here equates to 3 damage from the Aria and another damage from the Crackling Drake.
It runs a Lightning Bolt into the Chalice. Aria up to 3, Pulliam to 17, and now this is attack. What is this, 12? Or is it 11?
No. Either way.
A lot. It's a 2-turn clock, I'll
It is
tell you
quite a
that.
bit. Now, Pulliam here, even if he has a snaring bridge, he's probably going to lose to the Arya, decides to pack it in here so they can finish a game 3. They got about 30 minutes left, but sometimes these blue prison decks take a little while to set up, and
Right, so that is the first game win for Briksza, Sasser, Warfield. As it stands, there is going to be at most 3 more games played. 1 more game win for Pulliam or Brier will clinch the match. So we're going to go ahead and move over to the Legacy match. These players were ready to play. Briksza on the play. Polluted Delta Go versus Misty Rainforest for Brier. Turn 2, we see Volcanic Island for Briksza. He'll crack the Polluted Delta to 19. Casting a Tarmogoyf, Tropical Island is defined off the fetch. Brier cracks the Rainforest to 19. Get a look at some Hydro Blasts that came in off the sideboard there. This is a card I actually really like now that Ren and 6 is very popular.
yeah, it was always okay to sideboard a couple of them, but it's gotten significantly better thanks to Ren and 6 seeing a lot more play in these fair blue decks.
Speaking of cards I like, Spell Snare targets the Tarmogoyf. Briksza defends with Daze, though.
Yeah, and this takes the Goyf down, gets some pressure going, and now every Daze, every Force Will is going to be that much more heartbreaking. Tarmogoyf also a really important threat to stick for Briksza because it doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, and those 3 damage spells are the primary ways for Brier to get creatures off the table.
Here's a Brainstorm for Brier. Picked up Force of Will, Pyroblast, Hydroblast. None of this stuff plays against Tarmogoyf on the table, and in fact, Izzet Delver does struggle against the card a bit.
Oh, for sure. It was one of the heavy hitters in those Temur Delver mirrors back in the day. Both players didn't have virtually no way to get off the battlefield except double Lightning Bolt, and often it would just come down to Tarmogoyf staring at other Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
That changed a bit when people started sideboarding Submerge, but you don't see that card nearly enough nowadays.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Submerge, but yeah, it's been a while since I've seen one of those. Wasteland took care of Volcanic Island. We see the Tropical Island redeployed for Briksza. The Tarmogoyf attacks. What's that, land instant? That's it for now, so 2. Brier to 17. Wasteland and Tropical Island. Briksza will respond with Brainstorm. Now this is an interesting spot, because if you fight over the Brainstorm and Briksza has a Daze, he can kind of counter your Wasteland here. So you see Brier let the Brainstorm resolve.
Heads up play from both sides. The Brainstorm resolves, the Wasteland resolves. Delver has the follow-up. And if I'm not mistaken, Briksza does not have a land to play.
Yeah, just gets to attack for 2 again. Brier transforms the Delver to Chain Lightning. There's an attack for 3 from the Aberration. Briksza to 16.
Oh, that's really awkward. It's still just a 2-3.
Yeah, it could actually die to Lightning Bolt here.
Yeah, but Brier has a Lightning Bolt in hand, but at this point he might just want to go upstairs. He's actually just winning the race. You know, Briksza's finally gotten through his Brainstorm lock. He gets a fresh draw this turn. There's a Wasteland. Doesn't really do anything.
The mana bases right now is Snow-Covered Island for Brier, potentially Wasteland for Briksza. So that's the issue, is Brier can't cast a Lightning Bolt.
This is actually a really smart play from Rudy. He's going to move to discard instead of playing the Wasteland, so it'll grow the Tarmogoyf.
Yep, that's a great discard. Run in 6 makes it a 3-4. Brier finds Ponder. That's one worth fighting over because we haven't seen a second land for a long time. It's sorcery. It resolves, so Tarmogoyf's now a 4-5. I think we're looking at 3 non-lands for Brier, and that's going to be a shuffle.
I think you're really seeing the power of basic lands in Legacy here. If that snow-covered island was like a tropical island or volcanic island or whatever, the Wasteland from Briksza would have basically put them at no lands apiece, with him having a slightly bigger creature and maybe him winning the race. That snow-covered island is insulated from the Wasteland, and now Brier's just kind of pulling away here. Needs red mana to be able to close it out before the Tarmogoyf kills him, I believe, but that shouldn't be a hard ask.
Misses again on the land, knocks Briksza to 10. The Tarmogoyf now a 4 versus Brier's 11-point life total, and now Briksza has a land. It's Polluted Delta. Tax Brier down to 7.
Now the question for Rudy becomes, do you have an answer to the Delver of Secrets? If he does, if he can fight over it with a Daze or whatever too, he might actually just win this game when he didn't have a land on the battlefield for 3+ turns.
It's a tenuous spot with this fetch land because 10 to 9, 7 to 6, 4 to 3. That matters a lot in these aberration lightning bolt matchups. You see him crack it. It'll go to 9 for a ponder.
It's not a good look. Really need to have the answer in hand already, but he still got some time to find it. He's going to fetch a Volk. Going to ponder looking for like a lightning bolt or something. They can maybe deploy next turn and fight over it with a daze or something like that. But this is going to be a really close cut one way or the other.
Takes a look at the 3 cards for the ponder. And they're good. He keeps them. He'll draw. We'll go back to Brier. Draws Preordain. That's still not a land, but it's a look for some. Already had a ponder. He's going to cast ponder. That resolves.
Still no red mana source.
And it looks like he found a land, but it's another snow-covered island.
Yeah, he could keep the land, though, and then cast Preordain, putting both those on the bottom, drawing a card. And that would give him access to 1 more mana. But I think there's a lot of upside here to just shuffling and digging for a fresh card off the top, looking for one of those fetches or volcanic islands.
So he does shuffle. Volcanic Island will be a big deal here. Fistful of red spells. I think he might have missed again. Aberration knocks Briksza to 6.
Yeah.
Discard Pyroblast for turn.
Ooh, he drew it. He drew the lightning bolt.
And Briksza has a lightning bolt. There was a fight over Force Will, but Briksza had force backup, so this one is all tied up. So now we have 2 deciding game 3s.
Wow. That was a really well-played game by Rudy, and a bit unfortunate for Aiden Brier. Unable to find that red mana source to cast all those red cards from hand, but the story of that game was absolutely Tarmogoyf.
Yes.
You know, not able to kill it with most of the burn spells. It was a 2/3 for a while and was vulnerable to lightning bolt, but it wasn't vulnerable to chain lightning.
Yeah, a lot of misses there on the second land for Brier. As you mentioned, the sorcery and chain lightning wouldn't have killed it. Lightning bolt would have done it. Something you see in a lot of Delver decks right now, you see chain lightning played after lightning bolt as your second removal spell. Brier playing a full 3 copies. Don't really see dismembers in the format right now.
Yeah.
You can't use them to fight over planeswalkers. There are a lot of planeswalkers. But you would like to see something that could interact with the Tarmogoyf on the battlefield.
Well, over the last couple of years, Tarmogoyf's really seen a downswing in playability in Legacy. I'm not really sure exactly why that is, because lightning bolt has basically been ubiquitous through all the fair decks. And Tarmogoyf kind of gets over that. But I think a lot of the Grixis Delver decks and Deathrite Shaman decks basically kept Tarmogoyf down by either shrinking him with Deathrite Shaman or just, kind of splashing for black removal like Fatal Push to go along with Deathrite Shaman and Cabal Therapy and things like that. It also got brickwalled pretty hardcore by Young Pyromancer. But now those decks have kind of fallen off the wayside, and now everyone's playing Dreadhorde Arcanist as the primary 2-drop instead of Young Pyromancer, and that makes Tarmogoyf feel a little bit better.
A big one that comes to mind is also Gurmag Angler. Was almost always larger than Tarmogoyf and never died to Lightning Bolt, which Young Pyromancer, Dreadhorde Arcanist do.
Yeah, for sure. Angler is a really powerful legacy card, but, it might be time to just move away from that type of a build. We see a lot of people playing Tarmogoyf this weekend alongside Renin 6 as that primary 2-drop threat in Delver Secret decks as well as non-Delver decks alike.
Yeah, Renin 6, a big pull back to green. But yeah, we saw Anglers for a while. We don't really see many Anglers right now, so that makes sense why Tarmogoyf makes a comeback.
Yeah, and I think that's mostly because people are focusing on green rather than black.
Right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and check back in with our modern match. Remember, the way it plays here, for Briksza, Sasser, Warfield to win, Briksza and Sasser need to win game number 3 here. A game win for Brier or Pulliam would win the match.
Yeah, and both these games are going to come down to the wire, so if Aiden is able to take the game from Rudy off camera, we're going to go ahead and preemptively apologize for that, but we don't want to hold up the tournament kind of making them wait.
Snow-covered island is where Pulliam will start. Sasser is going to sacrifice Misty Rainforest and Shock for a Steam Vents to 17. Pulling is fine. Can we get the arrows on the right players? I don't know if this is like the actual clock. Sleight of hand on turn 1 for Sasser. No chalices just yet, so that resolves.
Yeah, but that might mean that Pulliam just didn't have Simian Spirit Guide to play it on turn 1. You know, he's had Chalice of the Void early in both of these games so far. If he has it here for 3 on turn 2, it's a pretty good look for this prison deck.
Second snow-covered island for Pulliam. Chalice of the Void on 1. Do we have a Force of Negation?
That's
Looks
how
like
you
a
say
no.
Womp womp. Drake does not look very happy.
Chalice of the Void is a very frustrating card to play against, so I got a lot of sympathy for that.
Now, it might not be as bleak as it may seem. Sasser could have some threats in hand that don't really get affected by Chalice of the Void. The rest of Pulliam's hand could have been reliant on the Chalice of the Void resolving. But I think that this card here might actually just be the game breaker.
Yes.
Master Thopterus here, Brick Walls, Crackling Drake. It applies a lot of pressure in a very short amount of time.
Tormod's Crypt and Mox Opal show up right away, so 2 Thopters for Pulliam. Got to figure the best avenue for Sasser here revolves around Aria of Flame.
Yeah, he does have 2 copies in the sideboard, though. His main deck does emphasize Pyromancer Ascension instead.
See what Sasser can do on turn number 3. Manamorphose is where he starts.
And you can see it in his body language. He's in a lot of trouble here.
Second Manamorphose. Tap Steam Vents and pass. No action to start combating the Psy.
Well, Pulliam is mostly on empty, though. A Crackling Drake here on turn 4 from Sasser might be enough to try to race, but every 1/1 that Pulliam gets from each artifact he plays from Master Thopterus is going to brick wall it. Might need something like Thing in the Ice to really punch through, but most of his spells in his deck that trigger Thing in the Ice are going to be costing 1 mana, and so he's not going to be able to chain them together very effectively.
Don't have eyes on the full hand here. Pulliam does at least have a Simian Spirit Guide. You might see him cast that. For now, though, he's going to transmute a Tolaria West. Option for a land or a 0-mana artifact to make a Thopter.
Yep. Still not 100% aware of the build of Sasser's Phoenix deck. Going to go for the artifact just mostly to play it safe to protect the Chalice of the Void, but also to give himself another Thopter here.
Welding Jar it is. An attack for 3 from Psy and the Thopters. Sasser to 14.
Phoenix going to untap here, looking for something to be able to stick. Probably a handful of 1-mana things, but Finale Promise, targeting Manamorphose side of hand, is only going to basically cast Manamorphose.
Pulliam thinking about it, Tormod's Crypt in response. And he will just fire that off, so it'll cast nothing.
I mean, that's fair. The Chalice would still counter the sleight of hand, but the 2-mana bump that Sasser might hit off of the Manamorphose and the extra card might actually find him Thing in the Ice, which could get him back in the game. And the Tormod's Crypt basically time walks.
Attack for 4 from Pulliam, Sasser to 10. Here's Crucible of Worlds. Gets a Thopter from the Psy, plays Tolaria West from the graveyard, and passes turn.
Not the best hit for Pulliam in that spot, but it's fine.
Does have a 5 power now, so it's a 2-turn clock, and Sasser picks him up. Will Pulliam. It's going to clinch the match for Brier, Pulliam, and Stanley. They will